Welcome to another episode of the Frustrated CEO podcast. We are so glad that you've joined us for yet another great episode. My name is Patrick Lyons. I'm just one of your co-hosts. I'm here with my friends and my colleagues, Leb Tannenbaum and Patsy Freeman. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, good to see you. Okay, so listener, today's episode, we're talking about organizational resilience. Now, some experts estimate that organizations that act in resilient ways outperform their peers by up to 50% on shareholder returns. So if you weren't sure why this was important, there you go. And since we are not resilience experts, to better understand organizational resilience and how you can build it within your company, we've invited award-winning workplace mental health expert, psychologist, executive coach, and speaker, Dr. Marie-Hélène Pelletier, to join us on today's episode. Dr. Pelletier, welcome to the Frustrated CEO podcast.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure. I feel like I get 3 today, so that's amazing.
I know. Well, it's good. You're going to need to practice resilience after this. So we'll see. Okay, so for those who don't know, Dr. Pelletier goes by MH for short for Marie-Hélène. So you'll hear us using that a lot today. MH, your superpower is translating psychology research about health and resiliency and leadership into strategies that professionals and business leaders and their teams need to thrive. I'm excited for exactly that today, but just to ground us all with the same understanding, because I think we all hear resilience and think we know what it means, but from your perspective, in your own words, maybe a good place to start is, what exactly is resilience?
Yes, and it truly is a very appropriate question, because even when we look at the academic literature, there are different definitions there as well. So there are reasons why we're all over the map in some ways. One definition that many use, and that's what I'm using as well, is our ability to go through adversity and come out even stronger. Now, adversity could be acute, could be chronic, like the chronic demands of a pandemic, for example. And there is this element of growth. We're coming out of this with, a learning and growth. And that same definition applies to us as individuals. It's also true for teams, and it's also true for organizations. And here we're talking about, of course, psychological resilience, because at times we'll talk about financial resilience, operational resilience. In this case, it's psychological resilience.
Does resilience differ outside the workplace from inside the workplace?
How we get there, how it's tested, the types of demands we're facing, of course, will change in different contexts. So they will vary from that perspective. The definition itself stays the same, but how it shows up will differ. But I love that you're asking this question, because particularly, in fact, whether we're thinking about it from an individual perspective, so ourselves or individuals in our teams, or our resilience as a team, it's still composed of individuals who have a personal life. And therefore, as much as we want to have absolutely, yes, healthy boundaries about what's personal, what's professional, we still want to recognize that things are going on in people's individuals' lives that will have an impact.
So it's already getting complex. We've just talked about individuals, and now we've talked about teams, and we haven't even talked about the organization yet. Can you talk about the resiliency at the organizational level?
Yes. And we want to talk about all of these levels, really, because, number one, as leaders, this is how we think, right? We think about the organization, about the team that we're leading more closely, and ultimately everyone on the team as parts of this overall organization, but also as individuals. As an organization, that means the ability of the organization, from a psychological perspective, to go through adversity and come out even stronger. So the ways in which this translates in terms of outcomes for the organization, it's in part what will allow the organization to go through challenges and maintain an eye for what's going on externally, as opposed to going through such a challenge and we have become all internally focused, and it puts the organization at risk, right? So an organization that's resilient from a psychological perspective will be better at maintaining that eye for what's going on in the outside. And there are things as an organization we can do that will increase resilience. And I'm happy to talk about that too.
Please.
I mean, what you just described is almost a counterintuitive move. I mean, with your body, you just kind of withdrew. Yet we want to lean out and look out. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. So the resilience of our organization is inside it. So we want to pay attention to it so that when it is high, it will allow us to keep an eye for what's going on inside and outside. One of the ways to think about this is to hear, and we've been hearing a bit more about this from various people's perspectives, but there is research from various areas pointing to the importance of psychological health and safety in the workplace. Mm-hmm. And when we are investing as an organization in this, we can also invest as individuals and as teams. But as an organization, when we're investing in creating a culture that is as healthy and safe as possible psychologically, we're creating a culture that then will be more resilient. Elements, for example, of what are we paying attention to if we want to do this, include things like building community. So things like ensuring that we create structures where people will connect with each other. Yes, we do need to do that. Paying attention to workload. And sometimes people are hesitant to do this because they think, oh, there's nothing I can do about workload. We don't need massive changes, but we do need to pay attention to it. And we most definitely need to talk about it. Civility and respect in the workplace. So the ways in which we're interacting with each other. So these are some examples that we know from research will increase psychological health and safety. So it means different things, but it also means that even if everybody else is saying something different, I, as an individual, feel safe to actually express a completely different idea here, which we very much need. But we also know it actually decreases risks of burnout. So many good reasons to pay attention to resilience as at the organizational level.
MH, you as you were speaking, you reminded me of, in a very recent episode, Ben Pring talked about the inefficiency of efficiency, where an organization can become so efficient, cutting staff, trying to make things so efficient that it becomes inefficient. He used the example of a hotel that cuts staff, and then the experience for the visitors, the guests, just tanks. Here you are talking about the impact of workload on, right? That's to me one of the things that happens when we become so efficient is the workloads become really high. So I am interested in hearing more about the link between workload and organization resilience.
Yeah, I think what we want is, because everything you're mentioning is important. If we take the example of, say, a hotel, for example, and yes, they need to find efficiencies. That's normal. That's part of the business. We do need to pay attention to this. It's how we're going to do it. Can we do it in a collaborative way? Can we have conversations about this is where we need to go? And instead of it just coming from, say, the leader, let's have conversations about how we're going to get there together. We may still need to cut roles and that kind of thing. However, it may be done in a way that will preserve more of the culture, preserve more of the psychological safety, decrease risk of burnout of those who stay, not only because it leads to a better result in itself, but also because they've been involved in designing it. And when we're involved, it increases our sense of control, our sense of self-efficacy, the belief that we can influence this, which we know will also connect with more resilience and less risks of burnout. So it's probably the overall direction in response to what you're bringing up is the importance of stepping back and looking at how complex this overall equation is and recognizing it as such. And we're going to need to do the same thing as AI comes in our workplaces and in our personal lives, where it will be at times perhaps either tempting or easy or just faster to take it and roll with it. And what we'll want to do is step back assess what do we want AI to do? What do we want the human to do? We don't need to have AI do all the things. There may be things we need to maintain for the human because the human satisfaction, the sense of meaning connects with some of these tasks. So no, not give them to AI. You see, we need to think a bit more about the bigger picture, the overall, as we move forward in general, and definitively as it relates to resilience.
Good.
MH, as I think of what we're talking about, maybe as an equation, and we're talking right now about characteristics and resilience, I'm also thinking about, are there categories of adversity that you might say are more difficult to come back from and grow from? And I'm thinking of times I've been, consulting in an organization, and suddenly the CEO is removed, and all those who love that person or that person in that position, some are mourning, some maybe are cheering.
Yeah.
But it's sudden, and then it's adversity for some people. Or I remember once I was in an organization, they called it Black Monday. They laid off 1,300 people in one day.
Yeah.
And they had a great culture. So it was like seeing family members depart.
Yes.
So can we talk a little bit about the other side of the equation, which is identifying the adversity that's going to impact the organization, teams, et cetera?
It's a great question. And I would say, so we want to recognize that some of these demands or adversity that come up are unpredictable. We have zero idea that they will happen, or almost, like a pandemic, for example. It's not completely zero. We knew that if we paid attention, we could have known that at some point we would have one, but we were not paying attention to that for most people. The point is, there will be things that will come as a surprise. We don't know. There are things that some people will know. Say a CEO being let go, for example, or a very large group of people being let go. When these things happen, or it could be also other things. It could be a massive project that we're trying to land that has a very firm deadline for all kinds of critical reasons that now we need to push. And that the impact of people having brought themselves to the bottom of their tank here. And now we're saying 2 more months, other solid deadline. They were giving their last breath here. So how do we, so there are some things like this that we didn't know for sure could happen, but if we're thinking a little bit, maybe it could happen, right? And so then it's helping teams prepare for this. And there is the overall general preparation by increasing the baseline of our overall resilience as a team through things that, like examples we were talking about earlier, that will help all of us, whether challenges are predictable or not. Once we have challenges that are predictable, then there's a lot of opportunity on how we're managing them. Sometimes it's the event itself, like a very well-liked CEO being let go, and it's how we're doing this. How have we supported our various managers here in having these conversations with the teams here? How have we reminded these managers of all the things, for example, the close connections, the sense of family, the sense of trust that may be impacted for people, whatever it is. If we've just announced it and encouraged people to move forward, introduce the next person, it's great, ignored the normal human reactions, we're going to deal with it for longer, as we know. So sometimes we're tempted to spend less time. We're thinking if we talk too much about it, we're going to make a big deal out of it. We don't want to multiply it by 1 million, but we do want to give it the attention that humans need just to be able to process it. And so it's the event, but it's how we're doing it. Can we do things gradually? Can we do things while acknowledging normal human reactions and ways to manage them, normalizing that these things can happen? There are ways to help.
So then how does this tie back into growth? You talked at the beginning of our episode about growth, human growth, where we need to grow. To me, is there a connection there?
Yes. Yeah. For example, let's use this example we were talking about just now. Let's say CEO, very well liked, needs to be let go for whatever reason, or needs or has been let go for whatever reasons. People are having their reaction here, but that may be a fantastic in other ways, fantastic opportunity for so many people to learn and realize that in the workplace, sometimes we are being let go. It can happen. It's a workplace. And therefore, how do we as individuals think about this as opposed to not ever thinking that this could happen? And as we know, then it comes as a real shock when someone's being let go, thinking their overall identity is now crushed to nothing. If we could inoculate everyone from this, right, and know that it can happen, no, changes nothing. Your value 2 weeks ago is exactly the same value today. It's just that the organization decided to do something different, right? That is an example of how we as teams and as an organization, we can grow from this event, for example.
I love that you talked about culture, and maybe you want to hear even a little bit more, because we work with organizations in the culture space a lot, and we work around intentionality. But I don't know that we've actually had specific conversations about how to be more resilient as a culture. So I don't know if this is the time to go a little bit further with that, but I'm sure our listeners are like, okay, I get that, and we do some of that, but I don't know if we're resilient. I don't know how we'll respond to AI as an example.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
It's in the background of our minds. It's in the background, even if it's not in the daily business yet.
Yes, but it will be. And so what we want is to make sure that we're having conversations about this. I actually have a brand new keynote that I just started delivering on the psychological impacts of AI and how we can optimize how this all works out in the workplace. And so what we're saying is, so culture refers to the sets of beliefs that we share together and how that's impacting everything we do, the way we think, the way we feel, the choices we make, how we adapt, how agile we are, all these things. So if I'm here as a leader in the organization, whether I'm the ultimate leader or one of the leaders, and in fact, it could also be if I'm an individual contributor, because we can all influence to some very strong degree. One of the things you can do is go to your HR partner and learn about what do we have right now in terms of, we could try first for a mental health strategy. If there's nothing on that, then our health strategy, sometimes even a physical health strategy. But more and more organizations, especially larger ones, will have an overall health strategy that will include physical, mental, and financial. And if you learn about what your organization's doing in this area, they probably have told you, but you don't remember, and you don't, you've got other operations to focus on all day, every day. So it's always good to have this conversation again, and possibly learn about what are the key areas of focus this year in terms of this overall strategy and maybe the few tactics that they're more focused on. Because then there will be things related to mental health. I'll get back in a second in case there is nothing, but let's say they're highly likely, especially in larger organizations, there will be things. And what you want to do as a leader is really, whether you think that this is the most critical thing or not, my suggestion would be take it. Because if it's already an initiative in the overall organization, it's probably good for your team as well. And the more you just attach your actions and your support to this, the more power you will have. It will be internally consistent within the culture, and you'll get more mileage out of your efforts if you do it this way. So that's one of the concrete ways you can do this. Let's say you ask and nothing's going on. They're not focused on this right now. They're earlier on their journey, whatever. Then here's another example of an action. You have likely team meetings from time to time with your group, and you likely have an agenda. Then put on the agenda resilience, just that. And initially, it could be as simple, like you could do this tomorrow, literally. Mm-hmm. It could be as simple as saying, today, I don't want us to spend a lot of time on this. What I wanted is to at least bring it on our radar in a more formal way, because I realize we need to pay attention to this. We need to do as much as we can to optimize it for ourselves individually and as a team. And we will need it moving forward. If nothing else, because AI is coming to our work in ways we don't even fully understand right now. But we probably have other things. We have fiscal year that ends in a couple of months. We have this massive project that is due in 2025. We've got whatever it is, right? So if all you do is spend 2 minutes, meeting number one, that could be this. Then future, and it doesn't need to be at every meeting because sometimes you'll have other items you need to hit, but maybe there is another meeting where you share one resource we have access to in this organization to support us in terms of our resilience. Could be that. Could be things like your employee and family assistance program, for example. It could be a lunch and learn or training that was recorded that's still available for all of us to watch and discuss together. These are examples. But we want to take action, and mostly, initially, it starts with conversations.
MH, I feel like every generation, I'm generalizing, every generation thinks the generation that comes after it is less resilient, more emotional, less capable. There are 6 generations in the workforce at this point. I think, is it 6, Passy? I'm looking at you. I think it's 5 or 6, right?
It's 5 or 6, yeah.
5 or 6. Do you see, so as the leader with an organization of a multi-generational organization, are there dramatic differences between either levels of resilience generationally, even acceptance of the concept of resilience generationally? Is there a silver bullet that will appease and grow the resilience of all of them at the same time? I realize that's probably a silly question. That was many questions. Just speak to the generational differences in the workplace.
Yeah, there's a lot. Okay, so, whenever we're talking about different population groups, whether it's generations, different cultures, different genders, different groups that we're putting together, we will often find that there are characteristics that are shared within this group. And then there are often more similarities between some individuals here and some individuals of the group that we're saying is so different from them, kind of thing, because within there's always individual variations. Okay. So there is so acknowledging that, right, to start, I see what you're saying. Especially the older generations have much less heard about even the concept of mental health. Like, mental health was basically mental illness, and mental illness was something we don't talk about. So we were not talking about this.
Yeah.
Whereas younger children right now and those coming into the workplace, the younger generations coming in the workplace right now were almost like mental health native, if I can use that language, because they were hearing about it in kindergarten. They had anti-bullying training in their 0 to 1 year old daycares. So for real, I know that exists. So the ways that they come in the workplace, the way they think about their own mental health is very different. All of this to say that, yes, different groups and different individuals may come at it differently. Ultimately, however, linking to the end of your question, we know that for all of us as humans, research does not differentiate, for example, by saying ways to increase resilience is like this for 40 years old to 50 years old. And I'm exaggerating it to make it funny, but right, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It is not like that. The types of things we want to do are the same regardless of the age we're in. But the challenges we're facing, hence the importance of looking at each of our context, the challenges we're facing, the demands we're facing do vary from individual to individual. And there is such a thing as adult development. So our life as adults in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, is not the same. The levels and types of demands vary again, generally as a group, individual differences as well. So complex answer to complex question, but these are some ideas to consider on this.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, what I'm thinking is now think about one of the things we know about culture. I was thinking this earlier when Lab asked you and you were speaking about culture. The greatest impact on the organization culture is the senior leader. perhaps a senior leader who's more senior in their career may have less awareness or understanding or embracement. I'm going to make up my own words. They may less appreciation for the need for resilience. It kind of goes back to just rub some dirt on it, get back in the game, right? Like, just that kind of thing versus perhaps a newer, I'm generalizing, perhaps a younger leader might be more aware and more sensitive to it.
It's possible. I think what I've seen is, it's also sometimes our own development, I'll call it, as senior leader. There may be moments earlier in our development as senior leaders where we may have been more perhaps operationally focused and therefore, it needs to happen. Let's make it happen. It's not happening. Why is that? Just make it happen. And then as you continue your most people's journeys, which of course will be very different, but what happens as we continue the journey usually is exposure to a broader range of people, broader range of situations, more exposure to more complex situations that force us as leaders to sit back and say, okay, I'm not going to make it if I just keep doing what I'm doing right now. I need to step back. I need to see things differently. I need to make sure I'm working with the strengths of this team and what are they? So I need to listen. I need to learn. I need to get out of maybe what I'm thinking, it needs to happen. We need to take what is here and in fact realize, and that's often I think comes with the journey, that if we do that, it's not just sounding good, it's true. We've experienced it. We're getting better by doing this, right? We think it's going to be so much better if we just ask for the thing and people do the thing initially. Down the road, we're like, oh, no. If I can just get out of everyone's way and let that happen, yes, you're guiding, you're leading, you're all the things, and getting the strengths out of everyone that's here, then we're winning even more.
So we just talked about individual health, mental health through your HR partner. What you're saying here makes me curious about organizational health through culture. We've been mentioning about culture, but how does the culture, an intentional culture, or a healthy culture, support what you were just talking about for the senior leaders?
Mm-hmm. So you're saying, just to make sure I understand, you're asking what can the senior leader do, or what are we looking to do with the organization? Just as
what can the senior leaders do through having a healthier or intentional culture to be more resilient?
Yeah. And I would say you do want, I'm going to first go back to this. You do want to work with your HR partner, because you don't need, as the senior leader here, to try to invent that wheel. That wheel exists. It has expertise. It's been designed very likely. So you want to listen, to go and talk. Sometimes there is, unfortunately, the tendency to see this as separate, nothing I need to take care about. We're hearing more and more of the importance and the value of working together, but we very much need to do this. So I would say, as senior leader, you're going to your partner and you're supporting and you're bringing this forward. What this may then mean, once you've gotten more information about what this is and committed to supporting it, is making sure you weave this in to how you speak, what you do, the other strategies here of what you're working on, so that we integrate even more the business strategy with the health strategy of the organization. I've seen leaders even work with their teams to modify their vision statement to incorporate in it the importance of the health. You're all nodding, so you've seen these too. And so, right? But it's not majority. It's not, right? We're not seeing it all the time. It may not need to be there all the time. That's just an example. But what you're looking at is where am I influencing as a senior leader? And if I'm wanting to increase resilience in this organization, what can this look like? And You could have ideas on your own. You could also bring it to your close team here of senior leaders and say, you know what? I've been thinking about this. I really see how we will all need this more, even especially with AI coming in. Let's talk together. Do it together again. Involve your team of closest VPs or whatever your team is here to think this through together. Not just because you'll have more ideas, you may get better ideas, but also, again, you'll get their buy-in, which you need, because you're going to go nowhere, even if, yes, it needs to come from the top and all this. But even here, you do need to generate buy-in. These people are human, and they may just say yes to you if you tell them, but you'll get more of a solid yes if this was a conversation.
Well, I mean, it's also making me think maybe there's some advice you might have for a listener about timing. We've all been in organizations where something has happened. Would love to think this adversity is making us stronger, but it's not going to happen in 3 days because we need to get back to work, right? So there's something about timing in here. Maybe it's related to psychological safety, but how does that make sense?
Yes. Whenever we can. So we have to be realistic, really, about what we're asking, what's going on. It's not because I'm the leader and I'm asking for this that we just need to go in and do this. Sometimes it's as if sometimes the leader will say, oh, we're going to go through the toughest time ever in this organization for the next 6 months. So buckle up because this is what we're doing. So, okay, well, and then what are we doing to support this period of time? And if we know this is going to be 6 months and we are now 1 month prior to this starting, what can we do in this 1 month? And what can we ensure we add in terms of resources, take out in terms of demands? Because otherwise it's as if as senior leader, I say, all right, all of us here, 4 people, we're going to go and live at minus 100 for the next 6 months. Let's go. Let's do this. And well, it may be possible as humans to survive in this, but we will need equipment. We will need lots of support. We'll need preparation. And maybe we'll get through, but we for sure need to have the equipment. And so the same way, we need to, when we can be a bit in advance, let's do that on timing. When sometimes it's more sudden, well, let's adjust suddenly, but let's adjust to this. And because even if it's sudden, it doesn't mean that everything else needs to stay. We are humans and limited. Again, different from our friend AI, we are limited. So therefore, we need to pay attention. And so and whenever the changes can be gradual, I would say let's consider ways to do that. Sometimes it feels good to do it all in one shot because we think it's going to be simpler. Most of the time, from a human perspective, gradual is better.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's really good. It's also making me think of M&A work, when we've done some merger and acquisition integration work. Not everybody jumps up and down, yay, we got acquired by. And some people do. Maybe, the marketing, the whole marketing group is excited and all the software engineers are like, oh God, why did this happen? So I guess partly what I'm thinking of is you're also describing that leaders need to understand the landscape. Yes.
Yep. Landscape. And sometimes part of what we need to do is even help the landscape understand each other. Right. So yes, absolutely. There's a lot of paying attention to the human reactions. And again, going back to this, but with AI, we'll need to do even more of this. And the more we will have created cultures where we are resilient and psychologically safe, the more we'll be able to hear all the various perspectives, the voices we need to hear in order to not just be appropriate and optimizing where AI helps and where we choose the human instead, and how do we make all this happen. There's a strong ethical aspect there. And as we know, with ethics, if there's an ethical issue, usually we don't like it. We think it's going to take forever. And we're hoping to find a faster way to not make it an ethical issue. And we know better that if we're thinking this, that really means we need to step back and actually go to each of the party involved and learn what each perspective is, slow it right down. And that's a lot of what we're seeing in the emerging research we'll need to do with AI in our workplaces, having a committee, having a structure, starting conversations so that we can be ahead of this. Because people are feeling it. Recent survey from the American Psychological Association is showing that a lot of people are worried about AI. And when they're worried about AI, doesn't help with their mental health either. Logical, but we're seeing it.
Yep. MH, I have one last question, and I'll turn it over to my peers for final thoughts before we get practical. How do I measure my organization's resiliency? Is there a way that you have a go-to way? I know there are assessments out there. Is that it? How do I know how good we are?
Yeah, I know. There isn't a one sort of measure tools for this. That you'll have tools for risks for burnout, for example. You'll have tools that your HR partners are together looking at to look at the overall mental health of your organization. Things like rates of disability related to mental health, for example, or absenteeism, levels of engagement, turnover rates. There'll be different indicators like this, and then you can look at them per team usually and that kind of thing. So it's usually a combination of indicators. That's the world I live in psychology. That's often like this. I wish there was here is the number. No, it's a combination. But you can listen to that combination and it will give you a direction for sure.
All right. Well, so listener, this is the part of every episode where we try to get practical, give you specific things that you can do in your business today, tomorrow, to start making, I guess in this case, to start building resilience at the leadership team level, in your own seat, and then at the organization level. So MH will give you the opportunity to go first if you'd like. What are 2 or 3 things that you can think of that a leader should pay attention to or do? And then we'll do round robin. And if you'd like to go last, you can just say so, and we'll let you go last.
Oh, let me go last. I want to hear you.
All right. Lev, Patsy, who'd like to go?
Go ahead, Lev. There's a lot to digest here.
I'm trying to stay in about 3.
Okay. Yep.
I think, one of them is that creating psychological safety intentionally as part of your culture is extremely important, and it may not be what you've been trained in. So get the help you need. Like MH, just from a organizational and team and individual level, create a space and allow people to speak up, even if what they have to say is maybe cutting across the grain of what's being said, because that matters. And I'll put it this way, because we talked about it: know your landscape, know the landscape of your organization, and how many generations are there, how many departments, what are the differences, what are the similarities, so that you can speak effectively to the entire organization as I'm picturing literally a landscape that is diverse.
Good. Patsy, you want to go or you want me to go?
I'm happy to go.
Okay, go for it.
I loved it that you said it's a complex problem. It's a complex process, really, and that we need to step back and assess. It's kind of a counterintuitive move. And part of stepping back and assessing is probably two points here, is the importance of having conversations for learning, conversations for exploration, conversations that allow me to say, what is my mindset? How can I shift that mindset to be more of a growth mindset?
Good.
So hopefully that was just 2, but there was a lot there.
Yeah. Okay. I will add, this is very practical, put resilience on your agenda, and then talk about it, bring it up, raise it, and talk about how you can, what you already have in place and how else you can impact it, ways to support it. So I thought that was simple and practical. As a leader, be realistic about what you're asking for. And whenever change is needed, but can be gradual, do that. Most of the time, gradual is better for the humans who are involved in change. And then I just think there was where we started is where I'll end. And that's the organization. Correct me if I have this wrong, but organization resilience really is the aggregate of the resilience of each individual within it. And therefore, if you're focusing on the individual, that will have an impact on organization resilience. Like, frame that correctly?
That's part of it. That's true. And we want that. But the other piece that also is important is that the resilience of a team here is not only that. So yes, we want to have, of course, each of us as resilient as possible because we'll bring our best contribution. But the resilience of a team is also something that belongs to the team here. It's not just, are we all resilient? Good to go kind of thing. It's also, as a team, are we clear on our goal? Do we have a culture that's psychologically safe, which you see is independent in some ways, to some degree, of how resilient we each are here individually? It's like an overlay on top of it. Yeah. So
excellent.
It's all of this. Oh my God, you three are good.
Well, we were just listening to you. So now, what might you add? What did we leave out?
Oh, you did. Seriously, these were good. What I will add is just two additional, even more concrete ways to do some of what you were talking about. Because I mean, you three are on fire, literally. But okay, I would say is, and all of you have talked about this in some ways as a leader, to take the initiative to take some actions, whether it's putting it on the agenda, whether it's making sure you create a culture that is psychologically safe. So here's a concrete thing. A lot of senior leaders have an executive coach. They work with one already. If you don't, you could get one that's specific to this particular goal or whatever. But a lot, it's a good idea to have one, right? And so if you already are working with one, use that accountability to push your next action. You don't need yet to make it part of your performance, yearly performance here. Down the road, you might, and encourage your team to do that. But for right now, if you want to start gradually again, you could just say to your coach, I want to bring resilience on the agenda in the next 2 quarters. And in the first quarter, all I want is to have uttered the word at least 3 times in meetings. For example, super concrete, coach is checking on you. Someone now knows, but it's still very friendly, very gradual, right? So that may be one way to bring this, concrete even more. Another piece is it could be true for any good behavior, really. But one of you was talking about how we want to make sure we value and support different perspectives. If everyone is saying, something, and one person maybe is saying something different, we want to support this. So commit to looking for this in big and small ways. Often the smaller ways are easier to find. And when someone says something that's different from everybody around this table, right? We could say, oh my God, Patrick, thank you so much for saying this. Even if the 3 of us were saying complete opposite, we need to make sure we do this. And I'm going like solid on and on about how fantastic that you, Patrick, said this thing where the rest of us were going over here. And so we may or may not go for the Patrick thing in the end. Doesn't matter. What we're saying is here, if someone has an idea that is over here, we want to hear it. And that will encourage that culture.
That's beautiful. Excellent. MH, you have a new book that just came out just a couple of months ago. It's called The Resilience Plan. Talk a little bit about that and where someone can find that if they want to learn more.
Yes. I wrote this book for literally this audience, professionals, leaders that accomplish so much on a daily basis. At some point, they need something to give them an edge, right, in their personal and professional life. And they tend to think that they can just wing being resilient or will themselves to be resilient, but it doesn't always work that way. You do need to have your strategic resilience plan that's specific to you, specific to your context. And that's what the book does. It brings what we know from psychology and from research. It connects it with the ways we do strategy in business. So it makes sense for your brain already. You don't need to digest this too much. But seriously, on a flight, you can actually go through this book. You need to cross a continent, but it's a fairly concise book. You can go through it, get out with your plan, and then change how the next quarter is going to look like.
Excellent. Great. Excellent. Thank you. I'm trying to think. Okay, if someone is interested in getting in touch with you, if someone wants to learn more or engage with you to help raise resilience in the organization, what's the best way?
theresilienceplan.com. So you go to theresilienceplan.com. You'll get everything about the book, me, what I do, or LinkedIn. Always fun to connect on LinkedIn. Love to see what people have to say there. So that's also a great place.
Excellent. Dr. Marie-Hélène Pelletier, thank you so much for joining us. Listener, you can find this episode's Let's Get Practical on our website. Please do us a favor, not just comment or like or share, but follow the show to make sure that you're notified about future episodes. Leb and Patsy, great job as always. Thank you both.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Dr. Marie-Hélène, again, thank you one last time for joining us. And listener, thank you for sticking with us to the end of another episode. We'll see you again next time on the Frustrated CEO Podcast.